Is this it for Tiffany Henyard? We're sitting down with our Dolton expert one-on-one to walk through the results last night and tell us what happens next. Welcome to The Takeaway. I'm Alex Maragos. For our first ever episode, we are so pleased to be joined by the expert of all things Dolton and Thornton Township on this story for almost 2 years now, covering it so closely. And we are so glad to be having her the day after the election in Dolton. Regina Waldroup is with us. Regina, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Yeah, forgive me if my voice sounds a little different. It was a late night, but a lot happened last night.
Yeah, we're getting you fresh off of election coverage late into the night last night. Yeah. First, just tell us, what happened last night?
Well, I was at Jason House's campaign headquarters. I kept, checking the clerk's office for votes coming in, and around 7:20, the crowd just erupted. And so then I check and the numbers are coming in and, he's just got these great numbers. It looks like what the clerk was saying early in the day, that people were going to show up. They were going to vote, and they did. And so at 7:30, Jason House called the race, and all the precincts weren't reporting. By 8 o'clock, all precincts were reporting, and he'd won the race with almost 5,000 votes.
I was going to say, the numbers we got show an overwhelming victory for Jason House. Tiffany Henyard said it would be a landslide for her. That's what she predicted. Am I correct?
That's correct.
It looks like we've got the opposite here.
Well, yesterday I was out, Alex, and I went to 3 different polling places doing my own exit polling.
Sure.
I talked to a lot of people, and, we wanted to be fair as we could, and we tried our best to find that Tiffany supporter. It was a hard time. Everybody coming out just said, we want to change. We want to change. I heard that a lot. We want transparency. We want change. And clearly, the voters spoke yesterday.
I want to ask, though, as it relates to the election results last night, has Tiffany said anything? Has she announced anything? Has she reacted to this what looks like an overwhelming loss in this primary?
So, of course, we reached out to her camp, several attorneys that she has employed, all yesterday, all last night. We did have a crew at her election or campaign headquarters. Not many people there. She did tell a caterer, and we're getting this from our photojournalist who was there, that she would have a statement. We waited and waited for that statement.
That was last night.
That was last night.
Okay.
We're still waiting for a statement.
Okay.
Perhaps we're hearing from another station. She did tell them that she accepts the results, but we want to get that on our own. We want her to say she concedes, and so far we haven't had that.
So there's been no concession.
No concession.
Okay.
And no statement, nothing from her camp right now, which is odd. But see, I think at any moment now something could happen, and something definitely will happen today. She'll there'll be statements, something. This is just not like her to be totally quiet.
So broadly speaking, for maybe the people who aren't caught up on this story, what is Tiffany Henyard accused of doing?
She is accused of, in a federal investigation, of misusing village funds, lavish trips, spending money inappropriately on things she possibly shouldn't have, Wayfair, Amazon, credit cards with no receipts. We do know that there were several subpoenas last year on the village and the township looking for all types of records on several people in her administration. Then Lori Lightfoot was hired to actually look into these allegations. And she found, at least in her investigation, that Tiffany and her administration were purposely hiding how they were using funds or misusing funds. So that's what she is accused of, but also she's accused of retaliation by a former employee, her former assistant. And
so Tiffany did not cooperate in Mayor Lori Lightfoot's investigation.
She did
correct?
not.
Okay.
But some of the people who work in the village and township did.
Okay. How did she respond? What does she say? How did she respond to those accusations?
Well, first off, when she found out Lori was conducting this investigation, she said Lori should not be coming into her community as a former mayor looking into what she's doing in her community.
Yeah.
So she really didn't want Lori there. And she also said that Lori was not going to get paid. So Lori was asking for several $100s an hour. It's still unclear right now if she ever got paid.
Oh, okay.
But Tiffany said flat out, Lori was not going to get paid for this investigation.
And it was the trustees, though, that hired Lori to come in. Is that correct?
A majority of trustees hired Lori to come in and do this investigation. And again, Lori Lightfoot is a former federal prosecutor and the former mayor of Chicago.
Right. Now, I want to talk about Jason House, who won
Sure.
the election last night. He, ironically, used to be a Tiffany Henyard supporter.
Yeah, he ran on her ticket.
So tell us a little bit more about him and his journey from going for being for Tiffany to now very much against.
Yeah, he was an ally. He was a Team Tiffany in 2021. But shortly after she was elected, that's when he says, she wouldn't communicate with the board. Him being the board, a trustee member, and other board members. It was her way, and not, let's talk to the board and figure this out. It was my way. We're going to get things done my way, something different. And he knew early on, this isn't the way you lead a village. This isn't the way trustees work together. There was no working together. And so that's when, shortly after she was elected, they parted ways. But in the meetings, what's odd is in the meetings, they never really butt heads. I mean, Jason, in the meetings, kind of a soft-spoken guy, very knowledgeable, but they don't really go back and forth. She goes back and forth with other trustees, but not so much Jason House.
Okay. And so what just happened last night was a primary. Jason is not elected to anything just yet. So
well, for all due purposes, I mean, he is the Democratic nominee. There is an independent running. We don't know much about her, and
that's what I was going to ask. Who is opposing him, and what does that look like?
Well, there's an independent person who is opposing Jason. They will meet in April, but we don't know much about this person. So my job today is to find out a little bit more about this person who's running as an independent in primarily what is typically a Democratic area.
Got it. What does this mean for Tiffany's political future? Of course, we know the super mayor. You explained it so well in your documentary, which I encourage everybody to go check out right now on YouTube. It's got over 1 million views. Congratulations.
Really? I didn't even...
Yeah, 1 million views. What is Tiffany Henyard's political future?
Yeah, that's a good question. She still is right now the mayor of Dolton until April, and she's still supervisor of Thornton Township. So you think mayor of Dolton, one community, Thornton Township supervisor over 17 communities. So she's not on the ballot for Thornton Township right now to a position that she was appointed to. She never ran for that position. She was appointed because Frank Zuccarelli died. He was the township supervisor. So she's not on the ballot right now, but she is promising to be a write-in candidate. So that will be the test, is what happens in April. But I think her political career, I think she's going to try for some other office. I think she likes that leadership. She likes that feel of being this person, of dressing up, assuming that power position. And all these meetings, she would dress up. I mean, I'd see her in court and she would be dressed down, not in anything special, blue jeans and a shirt and a coat. But then when it comes to the meetings, that's when, she puts on the makeup, the lashes, the nails, and she makes her presence known by walking in always to the meetings late. She wants you to look at her.
So what potential office might we be? I don't want to speculate, really. That's not what I want to do here. But I mean,
Cook County Commissioner. I mean, there are a number of offices. Maybe state rep.
I think a lot of people are going to be surprised to hear that, considering how popular she's proven to be now with official numbers in Dolton.
Sure, and maybe some people, it was an off-year election, Alex, and sometimes off-year elections don't get a lot of people to come out to the polls. Yeah. That is a fact, and I'm not going to say Tiffany doesn't have supporters, because she does. They are out there. There are people, I would go to meetings sometimes and I would get admonished by people. Why are you doing this to her? Why are you covering her? When I'm really unclear what I was doing. My job in covering the story and the accusations and what is happening here, but there are people who they favor Tiffany Henyard.
Your report,
and that's okay.
That's fine, right? Bring us back a little bit to who Tiffany is, what's going on. Bring us up to speed on the accusations, allegations, many lawsuits she's facing. We may not have time to get to all of them. I know we don't. Just bring us up to speed on where that all stands right now.
Well, I'm going to start with what I know right now. So right now we have at least 42 lawsuits naming her as a defendant. That's a lot. At least 42 lawsuits. Some days I'm in court, a month, every day, every other day. I mean, there's a lot. I can't cover every court case, but there are a lot out there. From former employees, from a former police chief, you name it, business owners who can't get licenses. There's just a lot of lawsuits involving her. Who is Tiffany Henyard? She was raised in Dolton. She became the youngest and the first African-American mayor of that community. Before she was mayor, she was a trustee for several years. She said she was going to take office and work with her board. But as soon as she got into office, there was clashes. clashes with her board and she wouldn't listen to them. But I think the biggest thing for residents, though, and that's what I really like to focus on as residents, is that, being ignored, not being taken seriously, being talked to anyway. This is their community. You as the elected official, you work for the residents, and talking to them, talking down to them, yelling at them. I mean, bringing up, older people. There was one meeting I was at, and there was an older woman there, and she spoke out, and Tiffany didn't like that, and she was like, "And the way your yard looks," and just it became just a cat fight for a village board meeting.
Like personal.
A personal. And look, I've covered a lot of meetings, Alex. A lot of them. Typically, they are boring. They are very boring. But this one, it kept you up because you had to, where is this going? Where's it going? But then in the end, I felt sorry for what's going on here. I'm like, how is their business being conducted at this meeting? There wasn't.
Yeah.
And who's on the losing end there? Residents.
You've done a great job putting them, I think, I'll just go ahead and say it, front and center in all your reports. Certainly in the documentary, you profile several residents who have had to deal with whatever you want to call what's going on in Dolton and in Thornton Township lately. I want to ask, why do you care about this story so much? You have stayed late so many nights, not just last night. You've worked on your off days, holidays. This has been a pretty much 24/7 thing for you. Why? Why this story?
That's a good question. I grew up 4 miles away in Harvey. I grew up 4 miles away, very familiar with the community. Mm-hmm. I still have family who live in the south suburbs, and I think the Southland gets ignored a lot in coverage from, news stations. I mean, we're not the North Shore. We're not downtown. We're not Lincoln Park. It's the Southland where a lot of minorities live, and the Southland is suffering. I think about why my parents went there in the first place. They were living on the south side of Chicago. They wanted someplace affordable, someplace safe to raise their kids. The Southland was it, but the Southland is suffering. Property taxes are sky high. There's no industry there. There is no industry. They're suffering from unemployment, no jobs. And so I said, you know what? I grew up in this community. I owe it to the people who live there and to my family that still lives there to try and bring some attention to what is happening in the Southland.
Just the mere bringing attention to it. What have residents told you about just getting coverage on this stuff? What do they say?
Last night, just being out, it was hard to do my story because so many people were coming up to me, hugging me, thanking me. They're like, we did it. But, I just wanted to shine a light on what's happening there. Yeah. I didn't do anything. I just wanted to shine a light. The people, the voters, they walk the walk. They talk the talk. They walk the walk. But in the end, here's what I'll say is that Dolton, what's happening there is not alone. It's happening in several other Southland communities, and nobody's watching. It's not on Lori Lightfoot to monitor or to take an active role in what's happening in Dolton and other communities because she's been asked to do investigations like she did in Dolton and other communities. That is well and fine, but I think the Illinois legislature, the governor, they need to take a look at what is happening in other South suburban communities.
On the state level, what have they said about what they should, shouldn't, can't do? What position have they taken?
We asked Governor Pritzker flat out a few months ago, what could he do to help Dolton? What is his thoughts about Dolton? And he said, Lori's got it taken care of. With all due respect, Governor, Lori has no subpoena powers.
Right.
She's a former federal prosecutor. She conducted an investigation. He could do more as governor. The legislature, they could do more. These residents, they were frustrated because they had written so many letters. We saw the letters to Kwame Raoul, to the governor, to other lawmakers, just trying to get somebody to pay attention to them, to listen to them. And you know what we did, Alex? We came in, we listened.
When you think about what lessons this might have, I mean, Illinois, I don't know how many times we deal with accusations of this politician or allegations. I mean, here we are. When you think about what lesson this might serve to residents, to other elected officials, what are you taking away from this case specifically? Because this has been, in my view, one of the craziest we've seen lately.
Two things. In 2021, when Tiffany Henyard was elected, you had about 2,500 people out of 16,000 registered voters who voted. Number one, you have to vote. You can't complain if you don't vote. You have a voice. Yep. People died for your right to vote. You have to get out there and vote, even if it is an off-year election. You have to vote. Number two, you have to go to those village meetings, those city
Gotta
meetings.
show up.
You have to show up. Some people ask me, how do things happen in the community? How do liquor stores show up? Why are liquor stores there? Why is a smoke shop there? Did you go to the village board meeting? Did you go to the city council meeting? And this is a lesson I take on myself because I think, man, I'm so busy. I can't get to the school board meeting. I can't get to my village board meeting. But you know what makes me want to go? When I see what happened in Dolton, I need to find a way to get to those meetings.
I don't know if I've ever been to a meeting outside of work.
There you
We go for work, but yeah, I'm right there with you. It's a little bit more civic participation can go a long way.
A long way.
All right, so we're sitting here now the day after the election.
Yeah.
Is this a breath of fresh air for Dolton? Is this a new day? I just, overall, you've covered Dolton, you've covered Thornton Township, you've covered Tiffany Henyard for almost 2 years, almost 7 days a week, it feels like. Sitting here today after the election, what is your one takeaway from this story?
Well, last night, Jason House, the trustee who won the Democratic primary, he said this is a new day for Dolton. And all the residents I kept talking to, they kept saying this is a breath of fresh air. This is something new. This is the future. We're going to move forward. Lori Lightfoot said, hey, if a new administration possibly comes in, they can right the ship. They can get back to good government. They can bring Dolton back. And I think this may be an opportunity to do that. This may be the opportunity she's talking about. Because right now it's in the red, but she says, things can come back. We can bring this community back with the new administration, and here it is.
Last, really quick, you had a fantastic documentary to educate over 1 million people, at least, about what's happening in Dolton. Is there going to be a part 2?
People always ask me that. Alex, the part 2 for me is in the community where I come from in Harvey.
Yeah.
I get so many people writing to me, you need to take the same look you took at Dolton, you need to look at Harvey. And so my next focus will be looking at other communities, Harvey, Calumet City, other communities where they say they're having the same problems, Sauk Village. I want to shine a light. I want to talk to those residents. I want to be the person who listens. My sister called me and she said, you need to change your title, not Regina Waldroup, General Assignment Reporter, Regina Waldroup, the People's Reporter.
I like that title. Regina Waldroup, the People's Reporter. Thank you so much for joining us on The Takeaway. I love talking with you about this. And I know you're going right back out to do more reporting today. So thank you for spending time here with us today.
You're welcome, Alex.
Thank you so much for watching The Takeaway. If you liked this video, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss an episode.